Hi guys, my name is Emily. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about Sleeping Beauties by Stephen and Owen King. So this is a chunker of a novel that came out in 2017. It is the story of a supernatural plague that only affects women, whatever that means, and the reaction of two groups of men in a small town called Dooling, and society basically falling apart, and the discovery that there is one woman who can sleep and wake up again. So it is a multiple perspective novel. It shifts between various folks: the female chief of police, her husband who is a psychologist at the women's correctional facility. Like, it just shifts perspectives between all of these humans. So without spoiling anything, I think what you can talk about is the failure of this book to do the feminism. Because I feel what is really clear and what a lot of people are critiquing in reviews, because I looked at what other people were saying, which is not something I normally do, but I did for this one. So what a lot of people expressed was the idea that this book feels like two very privileged, white, straight, cis men mansplaining the patriarchy. And I can't disagree with that statement. The feminist messaging is very heavy-handed, it is very clumsy, it is also very first wave. It is not an intersectional approach to feminism at all. Now, I do have 2 degrees in essentially gender studies, so I'm very much not the target market for this sort of essentialist feminist conversation. To me, it felt like a response to the Me Too movement that just wasn't executed well. And one of the things that really stands out to me is the essentialist view of gender, because it is very unclear what they mean by a plague that affects women. Because what is a woman? Biologically speaking, does this plague affect people with the XX chromosome only? Like, it's so essentialist, it eliminates so many folks. Like, it completely eliminates trans folks, non-binary folks. That is such a huge oversight in 2017. Like, I could see if, like, Stephen King back in the 70s wrote a book about a plague that only affects women and watched society fall apart. Like, I could see back in the 70s where the breakdown of sex and performance of gender probably wasn't very much in the popular atmosphere. I feel like very much recently we are more and more accepting of the fact that gender is a performance. Gender is how you identify, how you express yourself based on your external dressing of your body and the way you perform the characteristics of your identity. Biological sex, which is also very nuanced, but tends to sort of be broken down into male and female, is completely separate from how you perform your gender. Like, that this book is just like, nope, there are men and women. Don't question it. All the women fall asleep. In 2017 feels like a huge failure and a huge oversight, among many other things. Like, one of the critiques that I do agree with is that, so this isn't a spoiler because it's like in the first line of the dust jacket. So when the women fall asleep, they become wrapped in a cocoon. And this leaves their bodies, like their physical bodies, vulnerable to the only folks who are left alive in society, men. We're gonna talk in those terms, women and men, because that's the terms the book gives us with no nuance. The men are able to physically manipulate the women's bodies and like move them around, do things to them, burn them, try and wake them up, touch them, you name it, you can do it to the woman's body. The idea that there's any sort of agency is removed because of the position that the women's physical bodies are put in. So that's really disturbing. And I feel like, again, a lot of these things aren't terrible ideas. They don't seem to be thought out to their full conclusion. At every point, it very much feels like any sort of attempt at social commentary on gender and patriarchy and toxic masculinity and all of these sort of buzzwords that have become popular in the media, any attempt to address that through fiction feels so heavy-handed and half-baked, because it feels like the story hasn't thought out the logical conclusions of the attempts to interact and offer commentary on these things. As an attempt at responding to the Me Too movement and incorporating that into a sort of supernatural fantasy space, I feel like, personally, I feel like this is a failure. For me, it doesn't do anything. However, given my experience as a woman on the internet who reviews Stephen King has, at least in terms of the most vocal constant readers, a largely man-identifying base. How can I say this? There's no nice way to say this. The most vocal, the most violent, the most hateful, the most sexist comments that I get across all of my videos are hands down Stephen King videos. If you look across my channel, the things that get flagged the most often, the things that get put into spam, the things that I delete the most often are actually always on Stephen King videos. And it's this community, there's a small kernel in the constant reader community of folks who maybe need two men to mansplain the patriarchy to them. Maybe need a character like Don Peters who they identify with, but who is clearly the villain of the piece. And if even one of these neckbeardy constant readers sees a little bit of themselves in the characters like Don Peters and stops and rethinks something, then I guess this book is a win. Because I don't think this book is written for me. This book isn't written for any of the constant readers who are attempting to be good humans. The last thing I wanted to address were just some funny things that I kept stumbling across in Goodreads reviews. A lot of people are upset because this book is clearly political. And so I just found these quotations funny, and I'm going to read them and then talk a little bit about text and politics. So the first one is, quote, "Political trash gets pushed down your throat in every page. I don't care. I bought this book to have fun, and I'm not having fun," end quote. And then the second quote is, quote, "I hate books that insert the author's political views into the plot. Stop sharing your political beliefs and disguising it as fiction," end quote. So we have these two ideas that are sort of the same, and like a lot of people said very similar things, but these were both worded well, and I wanted to sort of draw on the idea that texts that are political can't be fun. The Harry Potter series is a text that is heavily politicized. Look at the representations of race and gender throughout it. Like, there are so many, especially not that they're executed well, but if you look at like blood purity or the house elves, like there are some very heavy-handed political messages throughout the Harry Potter series. And they're probably the most popular, fun text that a lot of people in my generation read for fun. It's just that when your politics align with the text, you don't notice it, so it doesn't feel political. It's just when you have something like Sleeping Beauties where the authors are attempting to bring up gun control, toxic masculinity, sexual assault, feminism, it feels political because it is something that clearly doesn't align with so many people's beliefs. Like the heavy-handed critique of the accessibility of weapons throughout Sleeping Beauty. If you are an American and you believe that you have the right to bear arms and amass as many guns as you want, and you are a person who has a lot of guns and likes your guns, it probably feels very political to encounter a text that critiques that. Whereas for a Canadian, I don't own a gun. Nobody in my family owns a gun. Nobody that I know owns a gun or goes hunting. Like, I realize that in certain spaces in Canada, the more rural spaces where you do go hunting, you do eat what you hunt, those people own guns. But again, it's not, like, I would say that, like, any house in my neighborhood, it's probably a safe bet that nobody owns a gun. I can think of one person in high school whose dad was in the military and they had a safe in their house and the dad had a gun locked in the safe. And that was very alarming. When I read a book that critiques easy access to guns, like, that doesn't feel super politically challenging because it meshes with my own politics, that guns shouldn't be higgledy-piggledy, they shouldn't be easily accessible. Like, there is nothing apolitical. No TV show, no podcast, no music, no book, no play, nothing is apolitical. Any piece of cultural production reflects the culture, right? It reflects the politics of the culture. Like, nothing is apolitical, is what I'm trying to say. A long-winded way of saying that nothing is apolitical. And I think it's interesting that so many people are upset that the politics are visible in this book, probably because they're being challenged. So I think overall, for me personally, it really does feel like two men mansplaining the patriarchy to me, and I'm like, yeah, we got this. We got other issues that you've totally ignored. Do better. I liked it a lot more than The Stand, which was another sort of like plague apocalypse novel. Both The Stand and Sleeping Beauties have multiple perspectives. I had a real issue with the multiple perspectives in The Stand. I just didn't connect with enough of the characters, whereas I connected with more of the characters in Sleeping Beauties. Because this book invites discussions that generally don't go well on the internet, I will be very ruthless with the comments. I'm pretty sure some of the lovely viewers are also really good at just flagging shit, because there's a lot of things that end up in spam that are just horrible. They end up flagged and I get to review them. Anyways, so be kind, be constructive. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing, and I will see you soon. Bye.